All right. So we need to have a little talk. Uh, it does appear that everyone has been hating on Destiny 2 quite a bit. Some of my videos have been a bit critical, as you could say. Um, but a lot of people out there right now, including people like Cross and a few others, are making the videos. Is Destiny 2 dying? Is it dead? Do people just up and stop? What's the deal? It's like they're playing off of each other. So I thought, let's take a little bit of a different approach and try to focus on more of maybe what they got right. What did Bungie get right? Since Destiny 2 is launched, what has Bungie done that has made them successful? Right? What have they done? Comment below. Let's get some comments and dialogue going on this one. I popped in a few people's chats. Again, I did a little Googling, and I'm going off of personal opinion here. But what we have thus far that has made the game great, we're not talking about Destiny 1 where they merged and came up with an interesting hybrid of FPS and MMO. But we're talking about Destiny 2. And Destiny 2 got off to a very rough start, and then it got its traction. Forsaken hit, probably one of the best expansions and DLCs ever, in my opinion anyways. But we need to talk about what did they get right before I think we can understand maybe where they went wrong, which would be a different video. But so based on those conversations and those readings, I have a small list, and we're going to do that list that I gained and then wing it from there, I guess. We're going to start off with raids. Okay. Seems simple enough. We had them in D1, but in D2, we've got some raids. Now, the raids have been hit and miss, but we're seeing what makes the game successful as a whole, what they got right. So we're going to start off with raids. Some are easier than others. Some are more gimmicky than others, but we have raids. Now, apparently as of Lightfall, when it comes out, we're going to have matchmaking for raids, which is going to make them even better. Okay. Now, this is not in any order. This is just a list. So, bear with me. So, raids. When they introduced armor mods, that we could change things up a little bit, get a little bit more use out of our armor. This is not to be confused with raid armor, where I don't believe raid armor is all that beneficial as it's specific to a specific raid. But armor mods. Let me know what you think on the armor mods. That seemed to be pretty broad, but welcomed by many people. Exotic missions and exotic missions / secret missions. This is overwhelming. We've seen a lot of videos out there. CB Gray's done them. Cross has done it. Houndish, all these people that have played the game forever, they miss the exotic missions and secret missions. It's kind of, those are one of the biggest things that they brought out for replayability, for new players to go chase and get something, to go after a carrot on the stick, and they knew at the end of the quest chain that they were going to get something, right? And so I honestly think, from my opinion, exotic missions is one of the top two. The next one that I also think is top two is dungeons. So instead of a 6-man raid, we have dungeons. 3-man, sure, they're not matchmaking, but you can get your fire team together. You can get a couple buddies together. A lot easier than trying to get 6 together. And you can go in and do the dungeons. You can do regular, you can do master, or solo. They made it so you can do solo dungeons, and you got flawless and stuff. Now, those are one of the few times I think the emblem is beneficial to say, hey, yeah, I soloed the dungeon. Because not everyone's going to solo the dungeon. Not everyone cares to. But So secret missions, dungeons, top 2. Number 3 for me is crossplay. Now, some people say, oh, crossplay is probably one of the worst things out there for the game. But that's when you're talking about PvP. And I honestly don't think controller versus keyboard and mouse is all that big of a deal. I think it more has to deal with cheaters and whatnot. But that's more my take on it. I think crossplay is definitely one of the biggest things out there. It doesn't matter which platform you're on. You get to play with your friends. If your buddy's got an Xbox, you've got a PlayStation, and the person or your son or somebody else has a computer or something, all of a sudden everybody gets to play together. So, recap: raids, armor mods, exotic missions, secret missions, dungeons, and crossplay. And then this next one that made the list I hadn't thought about until we were talking about it earlier in Vegeta's stream was Mantling. And when I thought about it, because we had talked about it when we went in and did King's Fall, since King's Fall is just a regurgitated raid. Really fun raid, but regurgitated. Mantling, I remember in D1, since you didn't have Mantling, how much more of a challenge it was getting through if you weren't great at jumping or bringing people through. Mantling is made traversing the King's Fall raid pretty freaking easy. You don't have to worry about the jump sword technique or anything like that. You can literally just jump and get the mantle going on him most of the way to get through. But I remember in D1, we'd have people literally leave the party, go to orbit till we got to the next step, and then rejoin us. That bad. And then this one made the thing. I think they were much better at storytelling than they were in D1 than they have been in D2. They've always done a decent narrative. My problem with D2, but I'm not gonna downplay it, is they don't finish their stories. Dreaming City is never finished. We have a bunch of open questions, and they say we'll get answers. We're going to Neptune, in Lightfall. I'm not sure, but their storytelling's always been pretty good. They've always done a good job hyping things up with their story and their presentation. So, yeah. One that is from Destiny 1 that was brought up many times, that is not in Destiny 2, but in Destiny 1 that they got really, really right, was strike-specific loot. They gave a reason to do strikes. Nowadays, people log in each week on Tuesdays and they do the 3 strikes, and that's for Pinnacle if they need it. If they've got Pinnacle gear across the board, there's no real reason to go run it. I'm one of those people. I don't remember the last time I ran a strike, to be honest. But raids, strike-specific loot from D1. Black Armory. A lot of people brought up Black Armory. They said it was a better version of weapon crafting. And I kind of agree. You had the forges you had to go into. You could go farm for certain things. You worked for it. It wasn't just something that was there. You still had RNG luck involved. So it wasn't an automatic given. You were still chasing those carrots on a stick. But I think in when we had Black Armor, we had a lot more drops and we had a lot better RNG rates versus what we have now with the RNG. But I'm trying to stay positive, so we're not going to go down those rabbit holes. Another one was Adept Weapons, introduced in Grandmasters. Having that extra perk slot, like Big Boss 1 spec, to let you do more damage to various types of mobs, not just elites or whatever else, but, or to give yourself different adept versions of certain mods. So I agreed with that one pretty well. In Abonis' stream earlier when we had brought up the question, he said infinite primary ammo. And I hadn't thought about that one, but yeah, that was a pretty big game changer, not having to worry about, am I have ammo? I remember on D1, we would cycle through when we were first learning a couple of boss encounters, we would literally be like, going, I got to go find some ammo. I'm completely out. But with the implementation of infinite primary ammo, that was a game changer. Now I'm also the same mindset. If I'm going to go behind my ship and then drop down to a planet, I probably should be wherever I'm going from my ship. I should automatically just be fully loaded across the board, primary, secondary, and heavy. You know, but if I'm a primary ammo, I'll go with it. And that's where the list kind of started breaking down, with a lot more people talking about. Someone would bring up, say, lost sectors, right? And the farming for exotics. Good idea in theory. If you're missing an exotic, you can go to the lost sector, legendary or master. It really doesn't make any difference. I've done them both ways. I got 90% of my exotics just running legendaries faster, easier, and going on cruise control is because I don't have to think as much. So you can go in there, run them over and over. You're at the mercy of the RNG in the game, but you could technically go in and spend a couple hours farming up the exotics that you needed. Say if it was a leg day, you could farm up the missing legs on your Titan, move to your Hunter, move to your Warlock, depending on how much time you got and if the RNG was good. So that's where they were getting good reviews on how they implemented that, instead of just randomly in the wild being able to get something, or at the mercy of what does Xur have this week and are the stats any good. But where they took a downfall turn on it is, and this is why it's not so much on the list, is if you have all the exotics and you're trying to chase down and farm a specific piece, like a chess piece. So the Titan, you're going after Heart of Innermost Light or whatever, or a Curious, and you're going in that lost sector and you're in there for hours. Because you've got all the exotic chess pieces, you are at the mercy of not only RNG, but am I going to get the exotic that I'm going after, because you can't focus it? And if I get that exotic, is it going to have worthwhile stats or attributes distributed the way I want them? Most of the time, the answer is no across the board. So that's where people started getting put off with the lost sectors as being what Bungie did right. Thought out well. Could it be improved on is, I think, where they left it. Give the ability to chase after a specific set of pieces. And people are like, oh, that's too easy. Not with their RNG factor. I mean, you can go in there and spend some time chasing it. Or you could say, hey, I want to focus, it's a chest this week. I want to focus on arc specific chest pieces. So it narrows it down a little bit more if people are worried about just people grinding out the stat that they want really easy. But the reality is, even then, when you're trying to farm, getting the chest piece to drop isn't the best. And then so we go from that to not a lot else. The list is pretty wide open after that. I mean, it's a little bit of a broad list. Again, we talked about raids and armor mods, exotic missions, secret missions, dungeons. Dungeons was huge. Crossplay, big. Mantling, pretty freaking cool for parkour and stuff. Their storytelling's been spot on. They had strike-specific loot nailed in D1. Kind of forgot about that. Black Armory, fantastic. Adept Weapons, and infinite primary ammo. And then we have a hybrid situation, hit and miss one with the lost sectors and exotic armor. So now we're at this point where I want to ask the question, what do you guys think Bungie got right? What, even Destiny 1 or Destiny 2, what did they do that was so awesome that made it such a unique game that everyone out there, when a new game comes out, goes, oh, is this a D2 killer? Now, I don't look at games that way at all. That's no secret. I didn't look at First Descendants as a D2 killer. I didn't look at Outriders as a Destiny 2 killer. I looked at what the game developers were saying about the game, like Outriders. Outriders devs from the very get-go said it's a standalone game that you can play with a couple friends, which a lot of us want. We just want a co-op game, and I want to be able to go out and play it. You get 60 hours or so out of gameplay. You can do a lot of different things. I spent way more time in the demo for that game than actually playing the game once it released. But I never considered it a D2 killer. It had really cool transmogs, got a really cool combat system, but it needed more content. And I think had they waited a year, which they probably didn't have the funding to do, and did the DLC is part of the original release and maybe a little bit more because they're still lacking. They missed the storytelling. They got a great setup on it, but they just didn't deliver. Or like the First Descendants, people are like, oh, that's not a D2 killer. Well, it's not trying to be. It's a free-to-play game, right? And it doesn't have PvP. We did not bring up the other one here that's looking on my list, since I'm saying First Descendants, is hit or miss, love or hate. Destiny has been one of the few games that have actually brought out, as first-person shooters go, the success in PvE and PvP being present, and PvEVP, VE, however that's said, with Gambit. Kinda. They didn't have it thought out from the beginning, so it was really hard to balance PvE versus PvP because of how their databases were set up and how items were tied together, weapon perks, weapon types, class abilities, things like that, all being super tied together. So when you made a change to one, it ended up negatively impacting another. But it was, again, hit and miss on that one. So we'll throw the marriage of PvE and PvP present in a first-person shooter game. And we'll say it at that. We're not going to say that the PvP is implemented well. I don't PvP, so I don't speak to it, but I do know a lot of people right now specifically do not like the state of PvP. They have a bunch of stuff that's coming out. We'll see if it gets better. A lot of people don't like the fact that now you're going to have, not only it's going to be competitive sweat and skill-based matchmaking across the board. Yeah, I probably won't do PvP. People like the idea also of catalysts on weapons. This came up as a comment on one of my videos earlier. We were talking about, well, what quests force a PvE player to do PvP? A lot of the catalysts, and the comment was, well, they're not doing that anymore that we know of. I don't really mind if it's a weapon that's coming from trials. Fine. They're bringing Rose back in a competitive role, which is perfectly fine. They said it's for PvP. I'm okay with that. It's when PvE players are forced to do certain things, activities to acquire things that span PvE and all that. I always like the ability to have alternatives. Like if there's a catalyst and it says, like on Vigilant Wing, you got to go and you get a bunch of kills, so headshots and stuff with the Vigilance or the Mighty Midi tool to get the catalyst. Why don't give me an alternative to go do something in PvE? So, yeah, that's where I'm at with that. So let me know in the comments below what you think they got right. Let's not go to what they got wrong. Let's say what they got right and what they started off with right that is still kind of right, but it could go into the not so great, like the Lost Sector thing. Let me know in the comments below what you think. I really appreciate it. Keep positive, don't bash on anybody, but let's get some conversation going on it. If you like this, let me know. Hit the subscribe button. It means the world to me. I'm still learning it, but we're still covering it. We're still doing T2. I've got a couple series now coming out. I'm getting ready to release on Hogwarts Legacy, including the technical aspects of it. I'm starting to dig on Starfield, digging on that one as well, so I can have more videos coming out, as well as Diablo 4. I'm going to be covering those in kind of the similar aspect that I'm doing now. I'm not going into lore or anything like that, but we're going to start covering those aspects as well as some technology. Again, I'm GMD Geek. You can find me here. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, wherever as GMD Geek. I love y'all. You mean the world to me. I appreciate the support. I really appreciate the conversations. To me, a successful video, a successful stream is one that has interaction with those that watch it or participate, meaning there's some sort of conversation that I can take away from that others can go in and look at and participate in and see where everybody lies. Anyways, let me know. I will see you all in game or see you in streams. Until then, stay safe and happy holidays.